In this chapter, we're going to look at Active Directory as an identity and access solution, an IDA. Well, what exactly is an IDA? How does it fit into today's organizations, today's networks? And so that's where we're going to begin, is just kind of understanding the purpose of identity and access control, which is what an IDA solution is, and then looking at how Active Directory fulfills that purpose in a Windows network. There are going to be several Active Directory roles. The primary role that we're going to generally think of is Active Directory domain services, but we also have some other Active Directory roles that will be used for specific purposes in a Windows environment. And so that's kind of what we're going to look at, an introduction to Active Directory as it is used on Windows networks. So first, let's look at understanding exactly what identity and access control is. What is the purpose for this? Within corporate networks, you have users that are going to need a variety of types of information. Often that information is going to be contained in separate places. We have access to a database. We have access to a mailbox on an email server, file servers, web servers. So there's data throughout that the users are actually going to need to access. Well, an identity and access control, or IDA, is just a central part of a business solution that's going to involve storing information about the users. So it's accessing information, sharing information. It might, in some cases, require users to have multiple usernames and passwords. We identify these individuals in these repositories. Well, if there are a lot of different repositories, if it's an environment where we have different operating systems, different applications, then it might be a situation where we don't have a single sign-on. They call them heterogeneous in nature. We have Unix and Linux, and you have Windows to boot. Well, identity and access solutions are really just a group of technologies and products that are designed to help organizations manage user identities and the associated access privileges for those individuals. So they're databases for the most part that store information about the users, store their login credentials, and are going to store their rights and permissions. That's the whole point of an identity and access solution. Identity and access control is not generally something that's going to be optional. It's something that's going to be critical in all businesses, regardless of their size. So if they're large or small, this is required. It's also an area that frequently can get out of control, especially the larger the organization gets, the more disparate systems that we have installed, there's more and more of a need for IDA. Now, IDA solutions do consist of three primary elements that are considered as equally important, and these are known as the CIA triad. CIA, of course, doesn't stand for anything related to the government. It's an acronym or an acrostic, if you will, standing for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality, we need to make sure that the data that is stored on the network, on file servers and databases, applications, is confidential. And that is, it's only accessible by authorized individuals. Integrity, we need to make sure that that data cannot be altered by unauthorized individuals and ensure that when a user is accessing it, it can't be altered in transit. And then the last, availability, just speaks to the fact that it is readily available to users. When users need this data, it's available. And so most organizations are going to make use of a directory service. And a directory service is really just a repository of information, as well as the principals, the entities, the users, the groups that are actually accessing that information. Okay. Larger environments, this can be a little bit more problematic than others because, again, you probably have varied systems, different operating systems and different applications, and so it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But all organizations are going to seek to use this kind of directory service to facilitate what we are talking about here in confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So at the heart of the corporate network is that directory service. This is a repository for all different kinds of information on the network. We said users, groups, computers, file servers, printers, databases. We represent those objects in that directory service. Okay? And thus it is centrally controlling security by controlling and maintaining the user accounts and the groups, as well as the resources to which we're going to grant permissions. Unfortunately, many organizations, as we said, are going to have multiple applications, and sometimes that warrants multiple directory services because each of these applications may have unique capabilities and unique requirements. It's especially in those cases where it becomes a little bit more of a challenge because we have to try to keep all of these directories in sync. If we don't keep them in sync, then users are required to have different sign-on credentials to different places within the organization, and we can't maintain what we call SSO, or single sign-on. A single sign-on just implies that the account that you use can be used across multiple areas or all areas of the organization. Okay? It doesn't necessarily imply that you won't be asked to log in. So for instance, if I hit a file server, I'm able to access without authenticating myself, but then when I go to a web server, I actually have to put in a username and password. It doesn't imply that that's not going to be the case. What it implies is that you can use the same identity at both of those locations. Okay? So the file server didn't ask me, the web server did, but I used the same user account, username and password in order to access it. And so we have to be able to do that, and as soon as you have different systems, it can have a little bit more overhead. If you don't keep them in sync, then that can lead to user confusion and ultimately a loss in user productivity. So what are some of the business reasons for identity and access solutions? It stands to reason that outside of the technical requirements, there would have to be some reason from an organizational standpoint why this would be advantageous. And there certainly are those reasons. So number one, it can reduce administrative overhead or the workload when you're accessing information in multiple locations. So again, these different applications and whatnot, it actually benefits the administrators to keep all of this information in sync. It benefits the user for sure for single sign-on, but that's going to reduce the administrative workload as well. It's also going to help to maintain security. It increases operational security as it pertains to anywhere access. This day and age, organizations want to provide access from over the internet, so from home computers, from traveling laptops and whatnot, and the ability to centrally maintain all of your accounts, use the same accounts for permissions will actually increase operational security, especially in those scenarios. Thirdly, it allows the sharing of information across organizational boundaries in a more secure and manageable form. Each organization is going to maintain their own directory service, but we can link these entities together, and that can be done fairly simplistically. We can also protect intellectual property through a number of different communication mechanisms, and that's going to help you to achieve legal requirements revolving around data storage, access, usage. Confidentiality and integrity of data is integral to most organizations. As to what they need to provide, maybe because of business partners that they have, contracts with the government, just the type of business. This day and age, there are more and more regulations in place for today's organization. So those are just, in a nutshell, some of the business reasons why IDA solutions are going to be beneficial. Along with an IDA solution that stores the information about all of the entities accessing information on the network, you also have management solutions, and these are going to help to manage the various identities that users might have, and they provide a number of benefits. For instance, they allow us to manage multiple identity stores like Active Directory, Novell's eDirectory, Lotus Notes, other HR directories, proprietary databases. Many cases these are going to be add-in products. Active Directory is the IDA solution. The IDA management solutions may be other products that Microsoft or third-party vendors will provide. But they're going to provide a great deal of functionality. You can determine the current and authoritative identity information for an individual that might be listed in multiple databases. Of course, we can authenticate and authorize users across multiple entities. We can share information in a very secure fashion, and that helps to collaborate between partners and vendors, with this synchronization or at least linking between those locations. And then you can also secure the access and distribution of sensitive data. Now, the Microsoft version of this has always been the ILM, or Identity Lifecycle Manager. That's kind of come under the heading of Forefront now, and these are additional products that we're not going to really spend much time on. Our focus is going to be on Active Directory as an identity and access solution. But I really just wanted to kind of state from the outset that a lot of times we're not in organizations that are real cut and dry, nice and simple. And we might be dealing with a situation where we've got these multiple directories that need to be in sync, or I've got a partner that I need to communicate with. So mind you that is out there, and there is sometimes the necessity of doing that in today's corporate network. So again, we're going to continue to focus on Active Directory and how it functions as an IDA solution in a Windows network.